Hi, everyone. Welcome to our July webinar this month. We are Wallaroo.ai. We are a Series A startup in the AI production and operationalization space. Easier to write than it is to say. And really appreciate you joining us today for our July webinar. We have a great panel here of speakers. But first of all, I just want to thank you for joining us today. There's a lot of things vying for our time. We're all busy. So I do appreciate you carving some time out of your day to spend this session with us. At Wallaroo, we are a remote company. We're spread out across the US, Canada, and also a couple of folks in Europe as well. Let us know in the chat where you're from. I would love to see where you're coming in from and where you're based. I'm out in Seattle, out in the west of the US. Typically, a Seattle cloudy day for the summer here today. So, again, thank you very much for joining us on this session. As I mentioned, we've got a great panel of experts today, and on this session, we're covering Edge AI, with specifically looking at the healthcare and life sciences industry. If you've seen some of our previous webinars on retail and LLMs, I definitely encourage you to, go to our YouTube channel and check out those ones. But today we're going to focus on healthcare and life sciences, and specifically looking at those innovations and opportunities that Edge AI brings to this industry. Our panel of experts will share, cutting edge solutions. We'll talk about real world applications in this space. We'll also talk about how Edge AI can help streamline your operations and ultimately reduce costs as well. So I'll just quickly go through and introduce the panel. If you can come on camera, please. Karina. There's Karina.
Hello.
Hey, Karina, how are you doing? Great to have you here.
I'm
Next, I would
well
like to
today.
Awesome. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Ryan Vega. Ryan, awesome. Hi, Ryan. Next, Abhishek from Intel.
Yeah, hi everyone.
Yeah, Abhishek, how are you doing? And last but definitely not least, Yunus Amar, VP of Product at Wallaroo. Yunus, so if you're a certain vintage like me, that probably looked a little bit like Hollywood Squares and introducing the folks, but great to have our panel here. Now, as we go through the session today, we will have our presentations from each of our expert panel members, but we'll also inject some poll questions in as well. And to make this a little bit more fun, I've got some tabs here. If you hear me shaking the tabs, that means, hey, there's a poll question coming up, okay? So let's move on to that first poll question. So if you want to go to the next slide, please. So this poll, we know that some of you are from the healthcare industry and life sciences, but some of you may not. And so please let us know what industry you're from. It looks like we've got a fantastic cross section here, as we're seeing in real time here. Just a bit over half, trending towards almost just under 3/4 here in the healthcare industry, and folks from the other. And so, if you are from the other industry outside of healthcare and life sciences, don't worry. We will cover AGI, and there's definitely applications that you can learn from this and apply to your own industry. And as I mentioned, we have covered retail, and we'll be covering other uh, verticals as well in future sessions. So we'd love to have you join us for that. Now, to kick off, I would like to introduce our first guest speaker, Karina Dalkey, Head of Marketing for Software Defined Edge at VMware. Karina, over to you.
Hi, thanks, Martin. Next slide, please. All right, well, if there's one thing that we know, it's that change is constant. And at VMware, we are working with organizations across all industries, and we're seeing a major shift from just a few years ago. So a few years ago, customers were working to drive everything to the cloud with a cloud first strategy. And now a lot of people are realizing that if they process data locally, they are able to make faster decisions at lower costs. Gartner predicts that by 2027, more than 50% of enterprise managed data will be both created and processed outside of the data center. And this is a major increase even just from a year ago. Next slide, please. And what do we see as some of the drivers of pushing that edge compute to the edges of the organizations? What we're seeing is a lot of cases of AI and ML use cases, what we're here to talk about today, pushing that shift. So Gartner is predicting about 12%, a 12x increase in edge compute deployments with both predictive and generative AI. So by 2029, about 60% of the edge deployments will be running predictive and generative AI. And we'll walk through some of that benefit of seeing those in healthcare. Next slide, please. Some of the challenges that you can address in healthcare by edge computing is reducing latency and improving response times. So when you can process your data closer to where that data is being produced, you get a quicker response time and can gain quicker insights. This is really important, obviously, in healthcare. Edge devices, IoT edge devices, are producing a vast amount of data, and to take all that data and move it up to a central location for processing and then re-download that data, that's a lot of networking needs and a lot of storage if you're taking that up to the cloud. Sometimes a lot of the data that's being produced at the edge isn't really data that can be used to make decisions or is needed. So being able to decide and decipher that data locally makes a big difference. And of course, security and privacy are key. So in healthcare, there's lots of regulations, lots of sensitive data that you want to make sure that you can process that locally. When you can process that at the edge, you have less risk of data breaches during transmission when that data is in motion. Next slide, please. Some of the use cases that we see and the benefits of edge computing in healthcare are a few different things. So one of them might be remote patient monitoring. So you can monitor patients' health parameters in real time. You have less latency by doing that at the edge. You can get insights faster, which would result in better care and less hospital visits. Smart devices like insulin pumps and heart monitors use edge computing to make immediate adjustments. So you can get that feedback in real time and make adjustments as needed. And again, there's not that need for the data transmission and that delay. You can run real-time diagnostics at the point of care. And then a lot of the applications I'm sure we'll be talking about today include predictive analytics. So being able to take in all kinds of data, anonymized healthcare data, be able to analyze those, see patterns, see similarities, and then also see anomalies can give doctors insights faster, anticipating what certain symptoms might turn into. And if you can treat something before it becomes a problem in a preventative manner, obviously the outcome is going to be a lot more positive. Next slide, please. So how does VMware fit into all of this? VMware, as you know, is an infrastructure company. So these AI and ML applications need the right compute to be able to run them properly. And that's where VMware comes in. So deploying AI at the edge does have its challenges. There's a lot of challenges due to the scale. You might have hundreds or even thousands of sites where you're trying to run edge workloads. Those sites might have inconsistent network connectivity, so you want to make sure that those applications can stay up and running, whether they're connected to the network or not. And obviously, there's going to be a limited IT staff at remote locations, whether that be maybe a smaller clinic or even a small remote location not in an urban area. You need the right resources and the right compute to process those. So what VMware does is we've developed an edge compute stack solution to simplify the management, the ongoing maintenance of this edge computing solution, helping to remove a lot of that complexity. Couple of the features are this compute stack solution is optimized for both real-time and non-real-time applications. This is really important. For example, if you have computer vision, computer inferencing applications, so you're taking in a lot of imaging and you want to be able to process that in real time. Another thing that is key to this solution is we have a central orchestrator. We call it the VMware Edge Cloud Orchestrator. What that does is it takes the management, centralizes that management so that you don't need a whole bunch of staff out in remote locations. And we leverage GitOps technology to run updates. There's a central repository, and the edge sites, what they do is they simply connect to the central site when they have a solid network connection, make a pull request to download the latest artifacts and update themselves. And then also the platform features a solution that's very flexible, having support for both virtual machines for your more traditional applications and also Kubernetes for your new container-based applications. We feature things like GPU sharing, so optimizing resources across the board. Next slide. And I'll close off with an example of something that we showcased at Mobile World Congress in February. So we showcased a hospital on wheels, it's almost like a mini data center on wheels. There's a famous doctor, Dr. Adam Cowley. He's considered the pioneer of trauma care, and he gave the world this concept of a golden hour. And he said there's this golden hour between life and death. So when you have a critical injury, getting to expert trauma care within that first 60 minutes is very important. So what we wanted to demonstrate here is how we could help to bring that care to the edge, maybe to a site that's not as urban, a more remote location. So we mounted an SD-WAN edge device to provide connectivity, both 5G, 4G, 5G, and satellite connectivity in case you got out to a remote location. This helped establish a Wi-Fi network in the ambulance and around the ambulance. We also mounted an edge compute server so that we could run an AR application locally in the ambulance. And so we demonstrated EMT having AR glasses that could display the patient's vitals, enable video call back to the hospital, so back to the doctors and surgeons, so that they could get real-time updates and give advice remotely. And then the ambulance was also equipped with cameras to understand when supplies were being used. It had a computer tracking application on that. So if bandages, IVs, etc., were being used, that was being tracked automatically. When the ambulance came back in to the hospital, it could be restocked very quickly and turned around really quickly. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Martin.
Thanks, Karina. Great to see that, especially the example that you have there and taking advantage of that time and that window that the emergency services have with patients, and making sure that when you get to the hospital that they already know, hey, we've given them this amount of drug or treatment, and that streamlines that patient experience and hopefully gets them on the track to health. One thing you talked about, in those benefits of, putting compute at the edge, versus, in the cloud and the data center, how do you deal with reliability? If your workloads are running at the edge, if you have poor or intermittent connections to the data center, like, what happens there?
Yeah, so that's why it's so important to have your infrastructure optimized for edge applications, that each of those servers or those hosts at the edge can operate on their own. They don't rely on connectivity back to the central location. All those applications can run, and obviously that's critical for healthcare. And then whenever the network connectivity is solid, then it will make that request to the central location, to the central data center, to see if there was any updates, any changes to the Git repository, things like that. But again, that can be done very similar to what your iPhone does. Once it's connected to a Wi-Fi network, and maybe it will update at nighttime, and when you have that solid connectivity. So it functions in that very similar mode.
Awesome, fantastic. One thing that we will definitely looking forward to having you back at the end for the panel discussion as well. And let's appreciate your time there and insights, Karina. Great to see that. Let's move on to we have a poll question now. So before we have our next presenter, and so what we want to find out from folks in the audience is, how soon do you expect your organization to adopt Edge AI? Are you looking at the next 6 months, year, 2 to 3 years, or longer, or are you not even considering or have plans in this right now? So yeah, so far we've got about one person, 100%. If you other folks there, if you see that poll there, great to see that it's yeah. So far, definitely immediate within the next 6 months and the next year. I think yeah, with the rate of things are moving. If next 2 to 3 years or not, could be a totally different landscape in this industry. The pace at which we've seen in the last 18 months, especially. So let's move on to our next speaker. I'd like to introduce Dr. Ryan Vega, who's the Chief Health Officer from Vantic. Ryan, over to you.
Thanks so much, Martin, and thanks to everyone for taking some time to be here today. An exciting topic, and certainly one that, as you heard from Karina and Martin, is going to move quite fast. If you go to the first slide and the next one. So the first comment I want to make, and I talk about this frequently, is that AI in healthcare is not new. We seem to be in sort of the midst of this tremendous hype cycle. But it's really important to remember that healthcare and AI have been something somewhat synonymous since early in the 1960s. 1965 was the first real AI project that was geared towards what we now think today as computer assisted diagnostics and the research in life sciences. Came out of Stanford in the AI lab. And then in 1972, Mycin was really another project that showed the potential for artificial intelligence to, and in this case, it was designed to identify bacterial infections and recommend antibiotics to clinicians. Some things you'll note about that project and that application that were quite similar to the same thing today: reliability and the complexity of integrating into the workflow were things that stifled this application from becoming more mainstream. But then as you go to the late 70s and the 80s, there actually were a number of commercial AI solutions in healthcare. And so laying the groundwork as we think about where we are today, it's important to remember that this isn't something that's relatively new. So the next slide, I sort of comment on why all the fuss then. And so, what's remarkable about what's happening today is that before this particular presentation, that image never existed. And it wasn't created by an artist. That image was created by AI. And it was created by the user, in this case myself, just inserting a couple of words, some instructions, and the system was able to generate or create an entirely new image. And that's really what we're starting to see. So if you go to the next slide, we're entering into this new era of what I call sort of the intelligence revolution. There were multiple revolutions that certainly changed the way that the world operated. And in most cases, it was the confluence of technologies coming together that really changed, whether it was the Industrial Revolution or the Information Revolution. Now we're entering this intelligence revolution. And a lot of this will be driven by the idea that now we're seeing AI systems, particularly generative AI systems, be able to create and produce, to understand context. And when you begin to combine this with processing on the edge and IoT and real-time systems, you're going to see applications that will not only save lives, but will fundamentally transform the way that software has traditionally been a part of our lives. Next slide. So just a few comments on the growth that we intend to see. So over the next 6, 7 years, as we get to 2030, the AI market is going to be substantial. The rate of growth will be unprecedented. If you believe folks like Ray Kurzweil and their predictions on sort of the exponential growth of this technology, then some predictions suggest that by 2030, the global economy will double every 2 weeks. So I just want the audience to kind of think about that the global economy is doubling every 2 weeks because of the rate of change, the new levels of efficiency and effectiveness, new companies being created, new companies that are created and subsequently die because new companies are created in a pace and a change in a market that we cannot even fathom. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that particularly in healthcare, the projections are that things like generative AI will grow faster than really in any other industry. And it makes sense. The need is there, and so is the opportunity. So if we go to the next slide, I'll comment specifically on a couple of things, but introduce some of the real world applications in which artificial intelligence and particularly edge AI are being deployed today. So I want to kind of comment on three components though, but in the dynamics that we see in today's market, what I'm seeing from hospitals, health systems, and healthcare organizations is sort of cautious optimism. I think a lot of people still aren't really sure of what to do, but certainly are excited, and some of that's driven by the hype, but it's also driven by real opportunity. The cost of these systems and the ROI is still really unclear. Certainly on administrative processes like auto-generating notes and saving provider time, there's a clear ROI. But as we get into the clinical space, as we get into some of the more complex space, it's really going to be the first movers that show the impact of how much an investment has in terms of paying off. And then what is an organization's overall readiness? Organizations are really over the map here. And the requirements for these systems are generally the same. And you sort of saw this on the first slide, kind of date back to the 1970s. You have to have buy-in and integrate to the workflow. And I really think about explainability more than trustworthiness. And I'll comment on it real quickly. When I see patients, if I'm rounding and I really have a question or I want to know what's sort of the next best step, I go to something called Up to Date. And I'll read an up-to-date article and it will help me inform my clinical decision making. I implicitly trust that website. I trust the authors, even though I have no idea who these individuals are. So why? Why do I trust the content? Well, it's been peer reviewed and it's been accepted across the organizations and the organizations that we work in as something that clinicians can explain how that was derived, whether it was a randomized controlled trial, whether it was evidence-based clinical consensus. So there's some explainability on the provider part. We're not there yet to where providers have adapted the ability to really explain how a model is working, but this is going to be really important. And again, augmentation over replacement is key. And the benefits of AI at the edge, and you heard Karina comment on this, so I won't go through them, but one of the other things, and Martin said this as well, it's really about reliability. What happens if the network goes down? What happens if you're database driven and the database goes down? You really need the ability to have reliability, particularly for real world applications. So Karina talked about that smart ambulance. So I'm proud to be part of a project that's actually deploying that, a company called OpticX, who my company is working with as their software provider, and the Mayo Clinic have actually deployed this. It's been going on for 2 months. There's 2 ambulances now that are equipped with a satellite communication provided by Kymeta that enables a 5G mesh network, private network. And then OpticX enables the real-time monitoring, and right now in phase 1 of the pilot, real-time connectivity between the medics, either out in the field or back in the ambulance, to emergency room physicians and physicians on call, so that the physicians can help provide medic support in real time. Two amazing use cases of where this has changed individuals' outcomes, and in one case has probably saved this individual's life. Two were emergencies and urgent situations. And the next phase of this is to begin to incorporate patient monitoring devices as well as AI algorithms that will run on the edge to help predict cardiovascular or cardiac arrest in the field. And then the actual systems can take action independently. Now, those actions look like, if you can imagine, if you're a medic and a patient goes into cardiac arrest, the first thing you're not going to do is think to call for help. But the system can recognize that the patient is in cardiac arrest, can automatically call for help, and bring the physicians into the back of the ambulance through heads-up displays while the medics are focused on resuscitating that patient. So we can start to see, and we will start to see AI take action, not in the way we sort of think, but actions that augment human capability. Another one I'll comment on is this idea of sort of real-time clinical decision support. We're seeing mobile applications that are being used to inference things like wounds. This is a project we're involved in as well, where the company was using traditional asynchronous store and forward technology. Take a picture of the wound, send it to the EMR, have somebody review it later. Or now we can do inferencing even on something as small as the phone in the future, that it can help clinicians diagnose, or in the future, caregivers and nurses diagnose what may be going on. We're going to see this with virtual care as well. Another area where edge is going to be really unique is in the idea of biosurveillance. So one of the things you always think about, and a challenge with biosurveillance across large sectors, whether that's across states or even regions, is data sharing. This creates enormous vulnerabilities. Does everyone have to share their data into a common repository? Sometimes the data is not stored in exactly the right way. But what if you could federate, and what if you could distribute something called RAG? So the idea that I could look at retrieval augmented generation, which is sort of a fancy way of saying I've got a private sector of data or a private source of data, and I want to be able to query that, but keep it whole, put a large language model on top of it. What if I could federate that? And even better, what if I could query that? Meaning that hospitals would not have to necessarily share their data, for the ability to have curated and distributed queries across large networks, so that in real time, we could begin to see that there is a hospital in a particular area that's seeing a surge in patients arriving to the ED with COVID or with a particular type of influenza. So these types of things for biosurveillance become really important. And the reason I comment on that one is because the architecture here treats each of these individual hospitals or centers as an edge, all interconnected, but you gain that reliability, the privacy, the security. And we'll see this also move into the hospitals. We don't traditionally think of a hospital having edge, but each patient room, ventilators, each ICU room sort of acting as an independent edge reduces cost, improves efficiency, and can do a lot for the idea of smart hospitals. Next slide. So that's really sort of the core part. And I want to comment real quickly on where this is heading. So we think of today's software, we're sort of thinking about the commonalities of sort of database wrappers, right? We process data after it's stored in a database, then analyze it. What we're seeing is a shift. We're going to see a shift to the true real-time event-driven systems, where data is going to be everywhere, and the systems that we build and the applications that we build must be intelligent and run everywhere. Edge is going to be a hundreds of billions of dollars of market in the next coming years. You heard Karina's statistic from Gartner. It's not going to slow down. And so the ability for applications to be cloud to edge, prem to cloud to edge, and sort of function everywhere is going to be vital. Cloud's not going anywhere. On-prem storage isn't going anywhere. You're going to need those systems, particularly cloud for large compute, to generate new models. But then being able to shift those applications quickly out to the edge so that they can process data and move compute to where the data is while the systems are continuously learning will be that level of intelligence. And so that's going to be something we'll see. It's where my company's being pulled into, but I think the market's going to head in this direction anyway. So that's all I have today. Really appreciate everyone taking the time, and again, appreciate the teams for putting this on and letting me share.
Thanks very much, Dr. Ryan. Great to see that. I think, we were talking earlier about, you were in Japan last week, and it reminded me of a project I worked on a couple of years ago where, you have an aging population, but you don't have the staff to look after these folks. And so, the project was, these sort of edge monitors that would, monitor patients so that, they could get the attendance that they needed in a timely manner. In your engagements, how are you seeing, edge AI being used to improve these patient outcomes?
Yeah, Mark, it's a great question. So I think there's a couple of buckets. I'll focus on where the real world applicability is today because I still think we're a little bit away from the clinical, I would say, the real-time clinical decision support, although we are seeing a lot of this scratch the surface. There's a number of companies that are doing edge AI processing for remote ultrasound or ultrasounds that are coming out point of care ultrasound. But one of the things that I saw internationally, and I'm seeing internationally, particularly in countries like Japan, is how do you equip the home to be able to not just monitor an individual, but allow them to be more functionally independent? And it's certain things like how often are they getting up at night? How often are they leaving the house? Did they leave the stove on? Did they fall? So we often think about these things as being more practical, but they are truly healthcare related because the ability to live and function independently. We talk about individuals as they age, their IADLs or AADLs, how technology, particularly edge AI, can assist individuals to live longer in their home more independently while enabling some sort of protection, right? The ability for me or my sisters to know what's going on with mom and dad and to be able to have better predictions or to be able to intercept something like, hey, they're not taking their medicines and they're going to end up in the emergency room, or they're showing signs that they're falling. We need to look at the house and maybe equip the house with some support, either equipment or mechanism, so that they're able to be more independent. That's really going to have important applicability. We're certainly seeing that in countries like Japan, and then the US is going to be soon to follow.
Yeah, great points there. Great to see that insight. Thank you again, Dr. Ryan, and looking forward to our panel discussion. If we pop to the next slide, I think we got a preview. You see me shaking the tabs again. So we have another poll question. If you can, give us your answers. Which aspect of AGI in healthcare and life science interests you the most? Is it that real-time data processing and decision making that Dr. Ryan talked about? Is it, that reduced latency, and improved efficiency, or those cost savings and operational benefits as well? So yeah, so definitely a mix here, spread across that real-time data processing, decision making, as well as cost savings. When we deploy anything into production, and we got to make sure that we have cost and that ROI as well. We want to achieve ROI as quickly as possible, while at the same time not forfeiting any of that real-time or data processing. And with the advent of 5G and other communications technologies, that latency is definitely in a good place. Maybe not like our latency that we're having on some of our slides here today, but that's one of the things that we deal with. Now, our next guest speaker here, before we move to our panel, we've got a couple left. I'd like to introduce Abhishek Koala from Intel. Abhishek, please, welcome again, and I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, maybe next slide. Thanks. Thank you. So I think we heard from Karina and Dr. Ryan, and they kind of touched upon this point. AI is not new in healthcare, as Ryan mentioned, but it is at this point in time transforming health and life sciences workflow. And it is not because of any happenstance. the things have been building up to this that Karina and Dr. Ryan also touched upon. First of all, it's the digitization of healthcare, like the EMR applicability. Uh, is kind of 96 or 98% of healthcare facilities now have EMR, and all the health data is electronic now. Um, Even the patients and the doctors, everybody who's involved in healthcare, they're asking for more technology. Patients are asking for distributed care as well as personalized care. They want to get care anywhere, like at their home, at the hospital, at their office. And they also want the medicine to be personalized. They don't want one size fit all medicines. And all the innovation that AI is accelerating, nobody want to be left behind. The doctor, the nurses, they're asking for more AI tools. They're asking for to be on the forefront of technology. All of this has created a situation where a transformation is happening right now that we are witnessing. Next slide, please. As we are going through this transformation and looking at AI, we need to understand what are the top challenges, or in other words, opportunities with AI in health and life sciences. First of all, AI is still evolving technology. In 2015, deep learning became commercially viable once the ImageNet dataset, the error rates were lower than human error rate by AI models. So from that point onward, the AI kind of really accelerated commercial use of AI accelerated, but still it's not that far back, right? I mean, the regulatory frameworks are evolving. There is always a workflow challenge. The model size and complexities are growing, and that is leading to need for more and more compute, and obviously that is causing more and more cost as well. Uh, Healthcare contribute most of the data in the world. Like it's 34% of world's data is healthcare. It's growing at a CAGR of 43%. But still, when it comes to a specific healthcare model, a lot of time, people struggle with curated data for training that model. Just having raw data is not useful. You need to have well labeled data in order to train your model. Uh, Not only you need that kind of data, but the data quality, data provenance is also an issue. There isn't a habit or a norm of keeping data hygiene or knowing about the data. Say, for example, a brain tumor data set, what kind of population it belongs to? Does it belong to male population, female population? What is the ratio? Many times those data, the metadata is not available, and and the way models are trained with this data lead to biases. And again, AI is not one size fit all. Every organization has unique requirement. Every organization has unique compute infrastructure. They have unique set of other applications that need to work together with AI. AI is also not happening in isolation. So these and then we at Intel look at how can we deal with these unique challenges that are out there in this health and life sciences field. Next slide, please. So what what we believe is that the AI will be like everywhere, right? So we need to also put AI in each and every workflow. For example, our all our different architectures, the hardware architectures that are out there, even if it's the workflow breadth architecture like our core and Xeons, we have ensured that they are primed for AI workload. And that is what is powering the edge AI that we are talking about today. And we are seeing more and more, as Karina mentioned, a workflows going towards edge AI. However, the way we approach it is that whether it's AI on the cloud or on the edge or on the client, all the important frameworks and software that are out there, we support them, we optimize them for Intel, and make it a seamless experience for the customer base. Next slide, please. So Intel, like you may know Intel for all the different hardware processes, but we have a large set of software developers writing code every day, and we focus on the entire AI journey from the data prep, which many times the data engineering part is like 70% of your AI project, all the way to training your model or tuning your model, and to the important task of optimizing and deploying it. And we ensure that most of the popular open source frameworks that are being used are optimize for Intel architecture. We also go and create all this partnership in the community to make sure that these all of these optimizations can be provided seamlessly to you. Like we are connected with Hugging Face, all the Gen AI that we are talking about. A lot of time, people don't work with the foundation model. They are just too big, too expensive to work with. They are broken down into very targeted, smaller LLM models that can fit into your workflow. And those models are generally people download it from Hugging Face. And we have already made sure that you could use Intel optimization on Hugging Face model. We are also working with Valeru to make, and Valeru ensures that for edge deployment, they can use our optimization libraries like OpenVINO. Next slide, please. And as Karina has also mentioned, and so is Dr. Ryan, that that there are specific cases for edge workload, right? As we go in future, we'll see more and more targeted smaller models being created out of those large foundation models that like ChatGPT-4. There will be a lot of smaller targeted use case based model which will be able to run on edge compute and which will not need the cloud kind of infrastructure. At the same time, whether if you need faster response time, or you don't want to move around too much data, or you need to work on very confidential data, you have to work on the edge. But then for certain other workload, you may have to work with the cloud as well. So we are working at Intel to make sure that it's a seamless experience for you. It's more like a hybrid AI, and you can quickly move between edge and cloud as needed. And next slide, please. As I was talking about that, we have put even on our workflow breadth processes like our core and Xeon, we have made sure that it is primed for AIs. Like in our current core processor, which is also called AI PC, we have ensured that it has the integrated GPU, NPU, like another AI IP, and the CPU all can work together for your AI workflow. And Samsung has moved one of their ultrasound machines where they were using Intel Core plus a discrete GPU. They moved that whole workflow over to just the Intel Core Ultra CPU, because it has all of those different components in it. So just an example of how we are more and more workflows are moving towards edge. Yeah, next slide. I think I'm done with that. So thanks for listening.
Thanks, Abhishek. Great to see that. And I think when you were going through your talk then talking about that sort of edge AI and the data and the latency and things like that. So I was looking at there was an article in the BBC this week where they're trialing edge AI in detecting sort of cancers and breast cancers and other areas as well. And it was thinking about where your engagements that you're going across. How are you seeing AGI improve that diagnostic accuracy and that speed in medical imagery for things like computer vision and such?
Yeah, I'll give a quick example. Like basically, one of the projects we worked on was detecting pneumothorax, which is collapse of lung before an elderly patient is discharged. So previously, X-ray is taken before a patient is discharged, and previously radiologists and all used to take a look at it a couple of days later, and by that time, either the patient is readmitted or there could be even worse outcomes. However, we worked on a model, rather a pipeline of model that can detect right at as soon as the X-ray is taken, whether the lungs have collapsed or not, and accordingly, a red light or a green light will go off on the X-ray machine. So that is the power of edge AI. Like just a quick, right at the point of care, you are able to diagnose and come with an idea that there is a problem that then a radiologist can look at very quickly.
Yeah, right, fantastic. Especially as people get tired and sometimes miss things that the computer doesn't. Thanks, Abhishek. I'll see you in a few minutes for our panel discussion. Next up, no poll right now, but next up, I'd like to introduce Eunice Amar, so VP of Product at Wallaroo.ai. Eunice, I'll hand it over to you. Take it away.
Thank you, Martin. Thanks for having me. If you don't mind moving to the next slide. And to the next one, of course. So I think just to bring it all together in terms of what we have talked about, Wallaroo is basically not going to talk about something different when it comes to AI in healthcare. We're not going to be saying that AI is going to be curing patients tomorrow. It's happening, it's coming, but there are certainly a lot of use cases where data and AI can actually be leveraged to drive positive outcomes. And when you think about the sector between healthcare and life sciences, we're seeing a multitude of use cases that our presenters and panelists have already presented. But I think one thing from a Waller perspective that we're seeing traction in Edge AI, especially in the context of life sciences, working closely with Intel on advanced imaging and diagnostics is one of the flagship use cases that we're working together, working on a joint customer use case alongside Intel on identifying basically non-viable cells in basically tissue that is sequenced in the context of a lab to actually help advance things that you can see here, such as new therapies or drug discovery, generally speaking, on the life sciences side, which will then turn into outcomes on the healthcare side where clinicians and physicians can actually recommend better therapies to patients based on this new data and these new modalities that are being leveraged to drive these patient outcomes. And of course, that leads to, when it comes to applying this new science, the data and AI in the context of patient care, it leads to optimizing costs, reducing the time, and also of course, longevity for us human beings using knowing our genomics and DNA and everything better to be able to drive better outcomes and long lives for all of us. So with that, Martin, if you don't mind moving to the next slide, or Waller team, please. So when we look at the applications today, similar to deploying any AI-enabled application, there's a multitude of layers that need to be considered, and healthcare and life sciences are no strangers to that. You have to look at the infrastructure layer, of course, that talks about where you're going to be deploying your AI applications, your AI models. That is your cloud, that is your 5G network, that is also your edge computing stack, and also everything related to your environments that you need to run them on. Then of course you have the AI deployment management layer to make sure that the models are deployed and managed effectively, as well as the monitoring and explainability that comes with that to make sure that the models are effective and driving the outcomes that we expect them to drive. And then you have the applications that we all know and love that basically feed off of those models, wherever they are deployed, wherever these applications are deployed, whether it's in the cloud or at the edge or in the client, as the VMware and Intel and Ventic teams have been actually sharing here, and our presenters have been sharing. So when it comes to Martin, if you don't mind moving to the next slide. When it comes to talking about the AI at the edge particularly, and what it means for an industry like healthcare and life sciences, we know that data is available to actually drive research. What is actually challenging about that is how you can actually shuttle that data and be able to analyze it to actually drive these outcomes. So if you look at what Gartner is saying, beyond the stat that you see on your screen, there's another stat that by 2025, 50% of the data that can be used to drive outcomes is going to be outside of the data center or generated outside of the data center. So that means that the effort, if you want to do all of this in a centralized location, is going to be humongous, which means the outcomes and results are going to be delayed. So there's that, plus the existing reality that AI projects, 90% of them are still failing to drive ROI. So at Wallaroo, we have actually optimized for both areas where you want to make sure that you are able to run AI close to where the data and compute is without having to shuttle it. And then as you're able to run it, you're able to effectively manage it and monitor it so you can ensure that it remains effective and it's driving that ROI for the business. So our focus has been definitely on this AI inference layer in production, or AI or production grade AI inference services that are driving business value and tangible outcomes. Next slide, please. And in terms of implementing that and basically trying to understand these, why we're running into these challenges and why we're seeing 90% of AI initiatives failing to drive ROI, we can distill it down to really today when it's attempted in the field or implemented in the field, there's always heavy engineering, complexity on the infrastructure and the cost of that infrastructure to run inference, as well as once you get it, all up and running, how can you actually manage it, monitor effectively, as I just mentioned? And then, of course, the multitude of workloads that are popping up right now, especially for healthcare and life sciences. You have computer vision as one of the flagship use cases for Edge, but also now you're seeing the large language models and small language models also being deployed to drive specific outcomes as well. So all of that, variety and diversity in data modalities is a challenge in and of itself that requires some thoughtful approaches to make sure that it's repeatable and scalable without actually causing any challenges. And then, of course, in healthcare, having data everywhere, then the compliance and security privacy requirements on top of that is also another challenge that should not be discounted when it comes to implementing these solutions in the field. Next slide, please. And then when it comes to our approach at Wallaroo, this is very consistent with how we work across all industries, but healthcare, gets special treatment in terms of how we actually partner with our customers there, given the environment, how regulated it is. So we certainly focus on more of a partnership-led approach where we look to deploy and scale these AI initiatives thoughtfully, but also in a way that it's repeatable and efficient, to basically focus on reducing risk while driving continuous delivery and lower infrastructure complexity, which is always something that comes back and bites us, to be honest. So the more we can abstract away, the better in that case. And then, of course, add in all the goodies around the efficient inferencing, on the available hardware, whether it's GPU architecture or CPU architecture. Abhishek told us about the recent integration that we have put together with Wallaroo and OpenVINO as a way to actually make sure that you're able to target whatever is available to drive these workloads. And of course, bring it all together to make sure that these solutions remain effective by offering effective or efficient drift detection, as well as all the explainability components to make sure that when the models are deployed in a regulated setting, you're able to actually understand why these predictions are happening, how they happen, and you'll be able to mitigate any risks associated with those models. Next slide, please. Yeah, just to learn more about us, we have some resources that are available to you. The presentation will be shared at the end of the webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Eunice. Don't go anywhere. Stay on camera for us. We have a poll question. It's the last time you'll hear that annoying sound from me. So I've got a question for you, Eunice, but if our audience can help answer, what's the biggest challenge that organizations face in implementing edge AI solutions? Is it data security, privacy, integration with existing legacy systems, or the in-house expertise training, and also high cost and budget constraints? Could be GPU costs, etc. And while folks are answering that, Eunice, one question for you, and we talk a lot about this internally, in that it's not just the deployment to production and things end. How do we ensure that accuracy and reliability of those AI models, especially at the edge in these clinical settings?
It's a great question, especially in a regulated setting, as you mentioned. Having this foresight before deploying a model that you actually are going to have to answer the question about why a prediction has been produced is going to be, in my opinion, the main thing. So focus on explainability from day one. It's not something that you want to do on day 2 or day 3. So building with that in mind is, in my opinion, the most important thing. It's not about getting that 100% accuracy. It's important, but don't get me wrong. But the most important thing is being able to explain that answer, and also making sure that you have an easy way to explain it, regardless of the type of model that you're deploying. Because in my experience, I have seen when that has not been fully taken care of, then the effort and also the ramifications of not being able to explain those answers can be important, and basically can lead to some negative consequences.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks again, Eunice. If I can ask our other presenters, speakers, and experts to come back on camera. We have a few minutes left here, about 5 or 6 minutes. So we're just got some panel questions here. And one of the responses that we saw there on that panel response was, how do we address those issues related to data privacy and security in AI and edge projects? A week doesn't go by that I don't get a letter in the mail saying, hey, we've been breached and this is what we're doing about it and this is the mitigation. How do we deal with this in health, in the health and life sciences space? I'll put that out to everybody, so whoever responds first. Abhishek, you're nodding your head.
Yeah. So, first of all, in healthcare, there is very specific rules around data privacy and security. HIPAA laws in US, GDPR laws in European Union, and I think other countries have also enacted laws like India has done, China has done that. How Intel approaches it is that we have sort of security tools available, like for data encryption, or for that matter, create a trusted execution environment to execute your code base, or your data, work on your data in a secure manner. But we also leave it to the larger, like, healthcare experts and our customers to define what exactly that security means to them, how that complies with every aspect of security that they have to meet, and work on mapping it to the technologies that they can use.
Yeah, great points there. I think one of the other questions we had in that poll that put out to everybody is, when we talk about integrating with existing systems, uh, what's the biggest challenges in maintaining and integrating healthcare data for edge AI production with your existing technologies? Dr. Reina or
I'll take
Karina?
a quick stab. I think part of it is in the data standards and the ontology. So you're often speaking multiple different languages, and so it's hard for an AI model to inference if it doesn't understand the language in which it's trying to inference, right? So custom APIs or custom connections, when there's lack of interoperability, becomes a challenge in maintaining those and updating those and continuously updating those, et cetera. So that's one area we see some difficulty.
I definitely second that. And the more modalities we get when it comes to deploying AI applications, the more complex. I know more modalities will lead to more value for sure, better outcomes, more accuracy, but also the model development that will come with that is something that needs to be well taken care of in applications that can actually handle that.
I would second that and say that the AI requirements are different. As I mentioned, there is always unique requirements, like every organization has, depending on what other applications they are using, how the workflow need to coordinate with other applications. Also, where they are deploying, like it could be an embedded deployment that they may seek, or on the edge, or in the client, or or in the cloud. So it all becomes a situation where there are unique requirements, and I think our tools and technologies have to be flexible to meet the customer where they want to deploy, the way they want to deploy.
Great, fantastic. We have time for one last question, quickly. When what are the key sort of ethical considerations when deploying AI in healthcare? We see a lot of those biases and things on the media. How do we deal with that in healthcare, especially with edge AI deployments? Anyone?
Responsible AI and explainability would help. And we also have like this federated learning, and the RAG-based federated learning that Dr. Ryan mentioned. That also helps to get multiple different data points from different organizations coming together, just reducing bias in the model.
Excellent.
Awareness is a big piece of ethics, just letting patients know that these systems are being used and making sure that everyone's aware that they're being used is a big part of it.
Yep, I'd second that. And the product manager in me also wants to say that you want to know the type of question that you're going to be asked about, which is bias, fairness, explainability. So when you develop the solution, develop with that in mind. I think always knowing that this question will come is going to be helpful in terms of delivering the most effective application at the end of the day.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank our panel of experts today. Great to have you on board, Abhishek, Karina, Dr. Ryan, and Eunice. Really appreciate your time and help and expertise and insights. Also want to thank our audience. As I mentioned at the beginning, we do appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. Hope this was valuable. We have some information here. You can reach out to us. We're more than happy to chat with you. And we've got our YouTube channel as well if you want to check out more information around production and operationalizing AI and edge and across different industries as well. Thanks very much, folks. I'll see you next month, hopefully again on another session. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.